Everyone thinks baseball players are role models, but the truth is dozens of MLB stars have done serious prison time. Some of these crimes will shock you, and one player got sentenced to 45 years behind bars. But here's what's crazy. This isn't just a few bad apples we're talking about. I've gone through the records, and what I found is absolutely insane. Over 60 Major League Baseball players have served actual prison time, not just jail, but real hard time behind bars. And when you see the crimes they committed, you'll understand why MLB doesn't exactly advertise this list. This is the untold story that baseball doesn't want you to know. I'm going to break down every single case, from the shocking to the downright unbelievable. By the way, I've spent hours digging through court records and prison databases to bring you this complete breakdown, so stick around because some of these stories are going to blow your mind. The cocaine cowboys of the 1980s. Let's start with what might be the most famous drug scandal in baseball history. In the 1980s, multiple MLB stars got caught up in a massive cocaine ring that sent several players straight to prison. Willie Aikens. This guy's story is absolutely wild. Aikens was a solid first baseman who played for the Kansas City Royals, but his life took a dark turn not once, but twice. First, in 1983, he got busted for attempting to purchase cocaine and served 81 days in prison. You'd think that would be enough to scare him straight, right? Wrong. Just a few years later, Aikens got caught distributing cocaine, and this time the judge wasn't playing games. He got sentenced to 248 months. That's over 20 years in federal prison. He ended up serving 14 years before getting released in 2008. Think about that. A guy who was hitting home runs in the World Series ended up spending more time in prison than some murderers. But Aikens wasn't alone in this cocaine scandal. Vida Blue, the former Cy Young Award winner, also got caught in the same sting operation. Blue, who was one of the most dominant pitchers of the 1970s, served 81 days for attempting to purchase cocaine. Jerry Martin and Willie Wilson also got caught up in this same operation, each serving 81 days. What's crazy is that Wilson was still an active player when this happened. Imagine explaining to your teammates why you're going to miss the first month of the season because you're in federal prison. If you're enjoying this video, we'd love if you could hit the like button and subscribe. The violent crimes that shocked baseball. Now let's talk about the players who committed violent crimes, because some of these cases are absolutely horrifying. Mel Hall. This case is probably the most disturbing on the entire list. Hall, who played for teams like the Yankees and Indians, got convicted of aggravated sexual assault of a child and indecency. The judge sentenced him to 45 years in prison. 45 years. That's essentially a life sentence for a guy who was once signing autographs for kids. Chad Curtis, another former Yankees player who committed horrific crimes. Curtis got convicted of criminal sexual conduct stemming from the accusations of two teenage girls who claim he inappropriately touched them at a Michigan high school where Curtis volunteered. He received a sentence of 7 to 15 years. He served 7 years before getting released in September 2020. What makes this even more disturbing is that Curtis was known as one of the good guys in baseball. He was outspoken about his Christian faith and was considered a role model. Felipe Vasquez? This one's recent and absolutely sickening. Vasquez, who was a closer for the Pittsburgh Pirates, got convicted of sexual assault and child pornography involving a 13-year-old girl. He got sentenced to 2 to 4 years and was sentenced in August 2021. But the violent crimes don't stop there. Sergio Mitre, a former pitcher, got convicted of femicide, the intentional killing of a 22-month-old girl in Mexico. He got sentenced to 40 to 60 years in January 2022. A 22-month-old baby. Let that sink in. The murderers who played America's pastime. Here's where things get really dark. Multiple MLB players have been convicted of murder or manslaughter. Sam Crane played shortstop from 1914 to 1922. Crane was convicted of the murder of his girlfriend Della Leiter and her boyfriend John Oren in the spring of 1930 and sentenced to 18 to 36 years in prison. Tom Farley was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, but incredibly, he got pardoned in December 1898 after serving just 69 months. Tax Latimer. After his playing career ended, Latimer became a police officer with the Pennsylvania Railroad. In 1924, after a dispute with another police officer, Latimer shot him 4 times in the back, killing him. Latimer was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. He served from 1925 to 1930 before getting pardoned. What's wild is that he actually got pardoned after helping during a fire that was set during an attempted prison break. Jim Mahady. In 1930, 2 years after he last played in professional baseball, Mahady was charged with second-degree manslaughter after killing a woman while driving his vehicle under the influence of alcohol. He was sentenced to 6 to 12 years but got pardoned in December 1933 after serving 3 years. Charlie Sweeney. In July 1894, Sweeney shot and killed a man in a fight. The case went to trial, and Sweeney was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 8 years in prison. He was pardoned and released in March 1898 after it was found that one of the witnesses at his trial had committed perjured. He then began working as an umpire in the California League, and in August he got into an argument at a game, assaulted someone, and was arrested again. Pete Schneider. On February 16, 1935, Schneider became involved in a fight with a man named Gustav Schnabel at a bar in Los Angeles where Schnabel was employed. Schneider accused Schnabel of making improper advances towards his wife. The two men apparently resolved their differences and left together, but when the fight resumed, Schnabel collapsed after being hit by Schneider, fracturing his skull, leading to his death. Schneider was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced up to 10 years in San Quentin State Prison. While incarcerated, he managed the prison's baseball team. Blackie Schwamb. After his 1948 season, Schwamb killed a doctor in Long Beach, California, named Donald Buge. Schwamb did it to pay off a debt to a Los Angeles mobster, Mickey Cohen. Schwamb was sentenced to life in prison in 1949, but was granted parole in 1960 after serving about 10 years. The most shocking part? Some of these guys got pardoned or paroled after serving relatively short sentences for taking someone's life. The international criminals. Some players took their criminal activities overseas, and the results were just as devastating. Julio Machado was convicted of unintentional murder in Venezuela and sentenced to 12 years. He served from 1996 to 2000 in Venezuelan prison. Ugueth Urbina. This case is absolutely insane. Urbina was a successful closer in the majors who ended his career with the Phillies. On November 7, 2005, Urbina was arrested in Venezuela for attempted murder stemming from an incident on October 16. He assaulted 5 farm workers on his property, accusing them of stealing a gun. Urbina used a machete and tried to douse them with gasoline. On March 28, 2007, Urbina was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 14 years and 7 months in prison. He was released on December 24, 2012, after serving just over 7 years of his sentence. Raul Mondesi, who played pro between 1993 and 2005, got convicted of public corruption and embezzlement in 2017. The former Los Angeles Dodgers outfielder was sentenced by a Dominican court to 6 years and 9 months in jail and fined $507,000 for corruption during his time as mayor in the city of San Cristobal. He was accused of embezzling $5 million during his time as mayor between 2010 and 2016. The drug dealers and traffickers. Beyond the 1980s cocaine scandal, several other players got caught dealing drugs on a much larger scale. Esteban Loaiza. This case is mind-blowing. Loaiza, who was a successful pitcher and even finished second in Cy Young voting one year, got busted with 44 pounds of cocaine. 44 pounds. That's not personal use. That's serious trafficking. He got sentenced to 3 years and served from April 2019 to August 2020. Alex Cole, who played for several teams in the 90s, got convicted of conspiracy to possess heroin with the intent to distribute and sentenced to 18 months. Lamar Hoyt had multiple drug-related convictions. First, he got 45 days for drug possession and served 38 days in 1987. Then he violated parole and got 1 year, serving 10 months in 1987-1988. On top of that, he got 7 months for possession of marijuana and cocaine with intent to distribute, which he served concurrently. Ferris Fain played pro ball in the 40s and 50s. In 1988, the police conducted a raid at his California home where he was found growing 400 plants of marijuana in a barn used as a grow house. Fain was charged with possession to sell marijuana and was held without bail and served 18 months. Orlando Capeta, a Hall of Famer, got convicted of possession of marijuana and sentenced to 5 years. He was released in April 1979 after serving 10 months. The white-collar criminals. Not all the crimes were violent or drug-related. Some players got caught up in financial schemes that landed them behind bars. Denny McLain. This guy's story is absolutely wild. McLain won 31 games for Detroit in 1968, something that hasn't been done since, but his post-baseball life was a disaster. He got convicted twice on different charges. First, he got convicted of racketeering, extortion, and cocaine possession and sentenced to 23 years. But get this, the verdict got overturned after he served 30 months. You'd think he'd learn his lesson, right? Wrong. Later, he got convicted of conspiracy, fraud, theft from a pension fund, and money laundering. This time, he got 97 months and served 6.5 years before getting released in October 2003. John D'Acquisto also had multiple convictions. He got 63 months for conspiracy, forgery, and wire fraud, including trying to pass off a forged $200 million certificate of deposit. D'Acquisto was also indicted in 1998 on charges of defrauding investors of approximately $7 million. As a result, D'Acquisto was sentenced the following year to an additional 4 years and 7 months in prison after he pleaded guilty to wire fraud and money laundering, which was served concurrently with the term handed down in 1996. Jerry Koosman, who played most of his career with the Mets, got convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 6 months in September 2009. Pete Rose, the hit king himself, served prison time. Rose got convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 5 months, serving from August 1990 to January 1991. The charges stemmed from failing to report income from autograph signings, memorabilia sales, and gambling winnings. He was released from prison on January 7, 1991. The bizarre and unusual cases. Some of these cases are so weird you couldn't make them up. Roy Evans was a pitcher at the turn of the century. He was sentenced to prison for bigamy and was apparently married to at least 4 different women all at once. He served about 19 months from 1920 to 1922. It is unknown what happened to him after this. Ed Clark pitched 1 game for the now-defunct Philadelphia Athletics and was arrested for attempting to join the Boer Army during the Boer Wars in South Africa. He then escaped from prison after 6 weeks. Frank Delahanty got busted for transporting alcohol during Prohibition and served 1 year and 1 day. UL Eubanks got convicted for possession of alcohol and served time in both Leavenworth and El Reno federal facilities. The repeat offenders. Some players just couldn't stay out of trouble, racking up multiple prison sentences. Sammy Stewart is probably the most extreme case. This guy went to prison 7 different times. 1991, 2 years for possession of crack cocaine, served 7 months. 1992, unknown sentence for driving with a revoked license, served 5 months. 1996, unknown sentence for drug possession, served 2 months. 1997, 2 months for possession of crack cocaine, drug paraphernalia, and larceny. 1998, unknown sentence for drug possession, served 4 months. 2004, unknown sentence for drug possession, served 5 months. 2006 to 2013, 80 to 105 months for possession of crack cocaine, served 80 months. Stewart himself said, "There's a lot of times I wished I would have died because I was pathetic. I guess I started digging a hole for myself and it got so bad I got homeless, moneyless, friendless." Ted Turner, not the media mogul, also had multiple convictions: grand larceny in 1917 to 1918 and violation of prohibition laws from 1923 to 1925. Bill Wilson got convicted of theft twice, serving from 1909 to 1911 the first time. Dwight Gooden has a long rap sheet. In December 1986, Gooden was charged with resisting arrest with violence, battery on a police officer, and disorderly conduct. He pleaded no contest in January 1987 and was sentenced to 3 years probation and 160 hours of community service. In 2002, Gooden was arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated, having an open container of alcohol in his vehicle, and driving with a suspended license. He was arrested again in January 2003 for driving with a suspended license. In March 2005, Gooden was again arrested for punching his girlfriend after she threw a telephone at his head. He was released 2 days later on a misdemeanor battery charge. In August 2005, Gooden drove away from a traffic stop after being pulled over for driving erratically. He gave the officer his driver's license, twice refused to leave his car, and then drove away. The officer remarked in his report that Gooden's eyes were glassy and bloodshot, his speech was slurred, and a strong odor of alcohol was present on him. 3 days after the traffic stop, Gooden turned himself in to police. Gooden was again arrested in March 2006 for violating his probation after he arrived high on cocaine at a scheduled meeting with his probation officer. He chose prison over extended probation, perhaps in the hope that incarceration would separate him from the temptations of his addiction. He entered prison on April 17, 2006. On May 31st, Gooden said in an interview from prison, "I can't come back here. I'd rather get shot than come back here. If I don't get the message this time, I never will." Gooden was released from prison November 9, 2006, after nearly 7 months incarceration, and was not placed on further probation. In 2010, Gooden was arrested after leaving the scene of a traffic accident, having been located nearby and found to be under the influence. He was charged with DWI with a child passenger, leaving the scene of an accident, and other motor vehicle violations. He later pleaded guilty to child endangerment, received 5 years probation, and was ordered to undergo outpatient drug treatment. In 2019, Gooden was arrested for cocaine possession when he had been stopped by police for driving too slowly and having illegally tinted windows when they discovered 2 baggies suspected of containing cocaine. Gooden was charged with possession of a controlled substance, possession of drug paraphernalia, and driving under the influence. He pleaded guilty to one charge of possessing cocaine in August and was sentenced to a year probation in November 2020. Another arrest for driving while intoxicated occurred in July 2019. Gooden had been due in court to answer for the cocaine possession arrest in June, the day after his arrest in July. The modern era cases. This isn't just ancient history. Players have been going to prison in recent years, too. Lenny Dykstra, who played for the Mets and Phillies, had multiple convictions in the 2010s. He got 3 years for grand theft auto and providing false information, serving 15 months from 2012 to 2013. He also got 6.5 months for bankruptcy fraud, concealment of assets, and money laundering, which he served concurrently. Mark Grace got 4 months for DUI and endangerment, plus 3 years probation from 2013 to 2016. Darryl Strawberry could have his own video based on his addiction history and run-ins with the law, but here's a short synopsis. In September 2000, Strawberry tried to drive to see his probation officer after taking painkillers. While driving, he blacked out, rear-ended another car, and then tried to drive away. An off-duty police officer witnessed the event and arrested him at gunpoint. The next day, Strawberry admitted to the charges and his probation was changed to 2 years of house arrest. In October 2000, Strawberry left a Tampa drug treatment center to use drugs with a female friend, violating his house arrest and parole. On November 9th, he was sentenced to 40 days in jail with credit for time served. On November 3, 2000, Strawberry told a judge in Tampa that he had lost his will to live and had stopped chemotherapy. On November 30th, he was released from jail and sent back to rehab. On April 2, 2001, Strawberry was arrested for again disappearing from his house arrest drug treatment center in Tampa. On May 1st, he was sentenced to more time at a drug treatment center. In March 2002, Strawberry was back in jail for violating several non-drug rules at the drug treatment center where he was on probation. On April 29th, he was ordered to serve the 22-month suspended prison sentence from 1999. On April 8, 2003, he was released from prison after 11 months. The tragic cases. Some of these stories are just heartbreaking when you think about the talent that was wasted. Ron LaFleur actually had his life turned around by baseball. He was serving 5 to 15 years for armed robbery from April 1970 to July 1973 when he was discovered playing prison baseball. He went on to have a successful MLB career, proving that sometimes people can change. Gates Brown served 22 months for breaking and entering before beginning his MLB career, which shows that some players overcame their past. Jim Rivera was serving a life sentence for attempted rape, but got paroled after 5 years in 1949 and went on to have a successful baseball career. The modern implications. This list should serve as a wake-up call for current players, teams, and the league itself. The fact that this pattern has continued from the early 1900s through present day shows that this is an ongoing problem, not a historical curiosity. Young players coming into the league need to understand that fame and money don't put you above the law. If anything, being a public figure makes your crimes more visible and the consequences more severe. The truth is, baseball has a serious problem that it's never fully addressed. Over 60 players serving prison time isn't a few bad apples, it's a pattern that demands attention. From cocaine trafficking to murder, from financial fraud to sexual assault, MLB players have committed virtually every type of serious crime you can imagine. And while the league has implemented various conduct policies, the fact that players are still going to prison shows that more needs to be done. The next time you're watching a game and thinking about how these players are role models, remember this list. Remember that behind the glamour and the big contracts, some of these guys have done things that would shock you to your core. Baseball might be America's pastime, but for these 60-plus players, prison became their reality.